Welcome to Real Life Beyond Faith, where a formerly Christian, currently atheist couple takes a deep dive into the experience of life after deconversion. This is episode 17. I'm your host, Jenica Crail.
And I'm your host, Patrick Crail.
Woo! I almost could not remember what number we were on.
I almost had to step in and say it for you.
I was going to pull a Tom from Cognitive Dissonance and just make up some random number.
Right.
At the last minute, I remembered. Anyhow.
Yeah.
Welcome to this week's episode.
Where we don't even know what we're talking about.
I mean, when do we ever?
Yeah.
We're usually like, hey, what do you want to talk about tonight?
Oh, let's just wing it.
But tonight, we actually didn't have to wing it because we had a guest.
And guess who that is?
I don't have to guess. I knew who it is. I'm just kidding.
They can guess.
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
Go ahead, guess. Yell at your phone.
I'll give you a hint. She's the Faithless Feminist.
AKA Karen Garst.
Oh, you gave it away.
Oh. Ooh. Well, they were about to find out anyways.
Yeah, we had Karen on, and she is fantastic. Karen Garst, the Faithless Feminist. She's got a blog by that name, and she wrote a book called Women Beyond Belief. And she just does all kinds of awesome activism on behalf of women who have left religion. And we had a really great conversation with her, which is going to be right after this. First, we wanted to give you guys kind of an update on our lives since we talked a little bit about our house situation in the last episode. Mm-hmm. There are some updates to that. We may have found a house.
Yeah, we have a couple solid prospects here.
Yeah.
And turns out, funny enough, they are actually in the same neighborhood.
Yeah, which I didn't even realize until I was driving there, and I'm like, wait a minute.
You know what's funny, too? When you sent me the address, just seeing the street name, I was like, that sounds like it could be in the same neighborhood. So I looked it up on Google Maps, and I'm like, hey, it sure is.
Yep, so 2 houses, both in the same neighborhood. We applied to both. Good Lord, it is expensive to apply for renting a house. The first house that we applied for, it was $40 per adult applicant.
Yes.
So it was $80 to apply for this house that we might not even get accepted for. We haven't heard back. I think we did that on Friday. It's Monday now. I mean, we're really impatient, so
yeah.
I'm like, I want to know right now, are we accepted? But we're trying to just wait it out.
Yeah.
And then
the perks of trying to get it in as soon as possible is, at least with the one house, we would get the first month rent free.
Yes.
So we would just have to pay the deposit.
That would be amazing.
Would be awesome.
Yeah. Especially since our current landlords are giving us December's rent for free. So basically, we would just take that rent and apply it
the deposit
directly to the new house, and we'd be set.
Yeah.
So that would be nice. I personally like both houses almost equally. Like they both have like certain things that I'm just like, I need that. But
and of course we don't need it, but
yeah, but also I need a fireplace.
Right. Or all that storage room. Yeah. But both houses have a yard with a fence.
Yeah.
And a shed.
Yeah.
But the one house has a 2-car garage, which is kind of a bonus.
Yeah. And the other house doesn't have a garage at all.
Yeah.
So, see, like, they both have, like, completely different perks to them. I wish I could just, like, take both houses and merge them together and have, like, the most epic... Well, I mean, I guess if we just had a lot more money, we could just have that.
Yeah.
Dang it. But what I was saying about the applications, we applied for the second house today, And that was $35 per adult applicant. So we paid $70 to apply to the house today. So we've already dropped $150 just on applying to places. And we've only applied to 2.
Just on maybe we get this house.
Yeah. So I'm kind of freaking out.
Yeah, I'm hoping we find out pretty soon from either place.
I'm hoping one of these works and we can get moving with stuff. I hate being in that state of limbo where you're not sure like what's happening and when. That's why like I don't want to wait till March. I want to get stuff figured out. I want to get moving and start packing and
gotta pack again.
Again, we just unpacked, it feels like.
Yeah. And we still have stuff that's packed up that we haven't unpacked from last time.
Yeah, that is true.
But we shall find out soon.
Yeah.
Did I tell you about this one house that I saw? Rent was $7,000 a month. But I looked at all the pictures. Oh my God, that house is ridiculous.
That would be so amazing.
Has a pool in the back. It has a theater, a mini theater.
Oh, yeah, you did show me that one.
Yeah.
I was like, hold up. Is that a freaking movie theater inside of a house?
Yeah. But again, $7,000 per month.
To be rich.
Yeah.
We're definitely not. We're definitely a lot more comfortable than we used to be. And I feel really lucky and privileged for that. And I mean, that's pretty much entirely because of you, Patrick, and how hard you've worked at your job and getting a couple of raises just in the couple of years you've been there. Like, I'm so proud of you. I was thinking about that today. I was thinking, you know, I'm walking up to this house in this really nice neighborhood and thinking I can actually like afford to live here. And I was just feeling really grateful for you. Thank you so much for working so hard and doing that. I mean,
Thank you,
I work hard too, but I don't make nearly as much money as you. So, you know, I'm proud of me too, but I'm proud of you too. I kind of suck. Eventually I'll finish my nursing degree and then I'll be the sugar mama. Yeah. But for now, you can be the sugar daddy and take all the credit.
Yeah.
But don't you worry. Once I'm the sugar mama, you're not going to hear the end of that.
Oh, I bet.
and you think I have a big makeup collection now. You just wait.
Oh, jeez.
No, I'll probably end up just giving all my money away.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty good about that. I gave a guy some money on the side of the street today, too. But he seemed really grateful. I hate seeing people sitting out there in the cold.
Yeah, today was cold.
For money. Yeah, it was freezing. And I was thinking, like, you know, they say, like, some people are just scamming and they aren't actually homeless. They're just out there, like, begging for money. My thinking is, if you're at least desperate enough that you're standing outside in the cold asking for money, I don't care if you're homeless or not. Like,
you probably still could use the money.
Yeah. Like, if I have some spare change to give you or spare several dollars, then I'm going to
The problem is I usually don't have cash on me.
Right. Yeah, like being a server, I often have cash on me. And I just happen to have some today because I didn't put it in the bank yet. So I threw him a few bucks and it made me feel really happy. So
I'm sure it made him feel pretty happy as well.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I hope you put it to some good use, like some good whiskey or something. To warm him up.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if I was homeless, that's probably what I would be using it for.
Yeah. Even though it doesn't actually warm you up, just makes you feel warm.
Yeah, well.
Actually makes you colder.
Gotta take what you can get.
Do you know that?
Makes you colder.
Mm-hmm.
I think I did know that. I'd rather feel warm and be colder. Because I like, well, because I'm stupid, but yeah, immediate gratification is what I like. Just whatever makes me feel happy right now. because you're not guaranteed tomorrow anyway.
Right.
Man, I'm giving some terrible advice tonight. We got to turn these mics off.
Disclaimer, do not listen to Jennifer's advice.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that.
Take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah. I feel like there was something else I was going to say. I don't know. I'm just kind of rambly tonight.
I think that's about all very interesting. Oh, wait. The holidays.
The holidays.
AKA Thanksgiving. This week.
Yeah.
Yeah. So nothing real exciting, but because of Jenica's work, she is stuck working pretty much all week, all weekend, besides Thanksgiving because they're not open.
Yeah.
So she's not able to travel. My family is 5 hours away. Her family's 4 hours away. So our plan is to, me and the boys, go visit my family on Thursday and then go visit her family on Friday.
Yeah, and I'll be at home. And I'm just going to pick up all of the shifts.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to work and try to make enough money for our deposits.
And our move.
Yeah. So, and on Thursday, since I can't work since we're closed, I'll just either relax or pack or I don't know, do whatever I want because I'll have a whole day of just like quiet relaxation. That's a pretty decent way to spend a holiday anyway. I'll miss you guys real bad. Like, I'll probably cry. But but still, I'll try to enjoy it as well. Maybe I'll just like throw on some really loud music.
There you go.
And just like dance around the house and sing at the top of my lungs because no one's there to judge me.
Or ask you
know
questions.
What? That's the plan.
Ask you for snacks.
Yeah. Yeah. No little people coming up to me every 2 seconds asking me for things while I'm trying to listen to music and then I have to turn it down every 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be epic. I just got super excited for Thanksgiving. Wine.
Want to switch?
Music, dancing, and singing. This is going to be a Jenica holiday.
Yeah. Sounds pretty awesome.
You guys will have fun too. You can fill your bellies.
Yeah.
And I'll
be driving all over the place.
Yeah. Drive safe.
Mm-hmm.
I'll kill you if you die.
Wait a minute. You can't do that.
Just be safe.
Yeah. I know.
It always freaks me out. Like when you go off driving long distances and I'm not with you and stuff. Not that me being with you would change the circumstances or the outcome of the circumstances, but just like to say goodbye to my family and be like, I hope I see you again. Because I know like our lives are so freaking fragile. Not too long ago, a family of 5 in Cincinnati, or I think it might have been Kentucky. Yeah, which is pretty much Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. They got in a car accident one night. A guy went left of center, ran into him head on, and the entire
2 adults
family,
and 3 children.
Yes, the entire family of 5, all dead. And it turns out that it was one of my managers at work. It was his cousin and his cousin's wife and 3 children who were the ones who died. Like, I read that story and I don't know these people. I'm completely like disconnected, but I cried just thinking about how horrible that is. Mm-hmm. Like, just that in the blink of an eye, you can just lose all these people who are close to you.
And it may not even be your fault.
Right. Yeah. Like, there was nothing.
Minding your own business.
There's nothing they could have done. Gosh, This turned morbid real fast. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, y'all be safe, okay?
Yeah.
All right.
For sure.
So, yeah. Sorry for the downer. Happy holidays. Happy Thanksgiving. I hope you guys have a wonderful time. And I hope you enjoy our interview with Karen. She is fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Here's the interview. All right. So today we have the privilege of having the Faithless Feminist on Real Life Beyond Faith.
AKA Karen Garst.
Yep. And Karen wrote a book called Women Beyond Belief, where she included essays from 22 women who have left religion, and they came from all different backgrounds. She also has a blog called Faithless Feminist and a YouTube channel by the same name. And we're really excited to have you on, Karen. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
So I guess, first of all, in case anyone doesn't know a whole lot about you, why don't you give us a brief intro about yourself and where you came from?
Okay. On June 8th, 1950, I was born in Bismarck, North Dakota. And was raised as a Lutheran, went to undergraduate school at a pretty liberal Lutheran college, and then decided to go to grad school and ended up with a PhD, never used it. Then I moved to Oregon and worked as a union rep for the American Federation of Teachers. Then I was executive director of the Oregon Community College Association, and my last 13 years of employment was as executive director of the Oregon State Bar.
Oh, awesome.
Very
so
cool.
did you grow up religious, like during that time?
My dad was really religious. My mom taught Sunday school and went to church, but he was the one who, had the Bible every night he was reading from. Mm-hmm. And I often say that I wouldn't have had a social life without church because I didn't date in high school. And we had this group called Luther League, which was high schoolers. And we went roller skating, we went bowling. That's what you do when there's blizzards outside in North Dakota, and choir and all of those kind of things. But it was, the big debate at the time was Catholics and Lutherans, but I think they've since reconciled. So religious, yes, but nothing fanatical, nothing fundamental. When I talked about evolution, my dad never said boo, so he was in support of science, so it was pretty liberal.
Okay.
That's good. I can definitely relate to you on the whole, social aspect. I was homeschooled until 9th grade, so church was my entire social life.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't imagine that.
Point. And then even with youth group and stuff. And I've often said that that's one thing that we're kind of missing in our secular communities is, youth groups and things where young people can get involved. So I'm hoping to see more of that.
I think you're absolutely right, because what draws people together is the sense of community.
Right.
And usually when I go out on book tours, it's all older people. Yeah. There is a secular student alliance at universities, but in terms of youth, I don't know. I've never been to a Sunday assembly. They may pull in more youth.
Yeah. And then there's Camp Quest too for younger kids.
Right.
Camp Quest is great. Yes.
Yeah. But that's only like
once
a camp during the summer. Yeah.
So you were going to ask something, Patrick?
So I guess you said you grew up as kind of a liberal religious, but do you consider yourself, I guess, skeptical for most of your life, or did it hit at a certain point?
Well, it kind of hit. I didn't go to church a lot in grad school because I didn't know anybody. And to me, church was, I knew everybody in the pews, or at least a lot of them. And it felt real alienating to walk into this group where I didn't know anybody. And then when I moved to Oregon, same thing. I finally did join a church for a while. And my husband and I, when we got married, attended a kind of a New Thought group. It was called Living Enrichment Center in Wilsonville. And I would say, and this is 20 years ago, during that time, I started to read the books of the Jesus Seminar. And the one that did it for me was Bishop John Shelby Spong's book, Resurrection, Myth or Reality. I mean, I never really believed in Adam and Eve and that kind of stuff, but I was kind of holding on to the resurrection. And when I read his book, I went, no. And I think at that time I called myself an atheist.
Yeah.
What was it about that, about like letting go of the resurrection that kind of was the last straw for you? I'm curious.
Well, I think it's a very long book, and he makes a really good point about what could really have happened. And he talks about, hey, if somebody was going to be crucified and they were your leader, you skip town. they were probably all back in Galilee, the apostles, and they said, later on, well, maybe there is some good news here. Maybe we can still talk about it even though he's dead. And then, of course, the scriptures and everything adopted the mythology of the time, which was this, resurrection in 3 days that a lot of other mythological creatures took on. And it kind of made sense to me. And the resurrection was kind of hard to believe anyway, so that's what did it.
Right. Yeah, I feel like there were so many little things that just chipped away over time. Of course, the resurrection being one of them, the unreliability of scripture being another one.
All the parallels to the previous deities and stories.
Right. Eventually, you just reach that last thing where it's like, okay, I don't believe in this anymore. Therefore, it's just all bunk. It's very interesting. So I wanted to ask, what made you decide that you wanted to be an activist and start writing and start the Faithless Feminist?
Well, what's interesting is that my husband and I never joined any humanist groups or secular groups when we left this church. And then in 2014, June, the United States Supreme Court issued its decision in Burwell v. Hobby Lobby. And I happened to be having lunch with a friend of mine who's an author, and she said, you need to write a book. And I said, well, the only thing I get pissed about is religion. So that's what started it. And I was just appalled that we were still talking about reproductive rights. Right. I mean, grew up in the 60s and women's rights movements. And I remember before abortion was legal. And I remember when birth control wasn't easy to obtain. And I thought, wow, we're going backwards, going to do this all over again. And even though the federal government did step in and pay for that, it just galls me that a company, which was decided earlier in Citizens United as a person, can have religious views. I mean, if you decide to open a business, fine, but you have to serve everybody. You can't have a Christian bakery and not bake for anybody else. You're sitting on the public sidewalk. That's paid by the taxpayers. You can't discriminate. If you don't want to do that, go back to your house and figure out something else. But businesses should abide by the rules as far as I'm concerned. So that really got me started.
Gotcha. So which came first, the book Women Beyond Belief or the blog?
Well, I started out with a decision to write the book. And then I found a marketing consultant, and he said, you can't just write a book. You have to have a blog. And it was kind of funny because the first name he came up with was Godless Grandmother. And I said, let's not emphasize our age there, okay? So I kind of all about the same time. And somebody introduced me to Peter Boghossian, and he was my mentor. He's introduced me to Richard Dawkins. He introduced me to my publisher. I joined a lot of humanist groups in the Portland area and got to meet people and recruited people and started the blog. So it was all kind of at the same time.
Okay. Cool.
And you currently have 2 books out, right?
Well, my second book is called Women versus Religion, The Case Against Faith and for Freedom. And that's coming out June 1st.
Okay.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah.
And the Women Beyond Belief, Discovering Life Without Religion is available in audio, Kindle, and paperback. So that's out there.
Awesome. So with the Women versus Religion book, is that going to be just like a whole different style than the first one? Because I know the first one was a collection of essays. Is this one just going to be you talking?
No, it's an anthology, but it takes a little different bent. I recruited women who were mostly already authors. Valerie Tirico, Candace Gorham, Abby Hafer. So Valerie Tirico, they'd all written books before. And we kind of divided it up, and different people took different aspects of looking at women and religion. And then I have 2 Hispanic women and 2 African American women and a Jewish woman who talk about their unique perspectives, and then a woman who is transgender.
Oh, awesome.
So, for example, Valerie, in her essay in the new book, talks about basically women as property.
Right.
And she goes through everything, in the Bible, in the church, etc. And then Abby Hafer talks about biology, and starts out with the first cell was Eve. Got it? Eve, not Adam, Eve. And then Eve beget Eve. Got it? Asexual reproduction. And it was a woman or was female. So it's one of the things I'm trying to do is, and I'm going to be doing this in the spring, is see if I can interest women's studies groups in it. Because I don't know how you can have a women's studies program and not looked at the impact of religion over the last thousands of years.
Right.
You're missing too much if you do that. And if you refuse to do that, you just don't have the real picture, because the establishment of the patriarchy is due to religion, the elimination of all the goddesses, the focus on the woman being unclean. If you take that scene from the Garden of Eden, you have all the symbols of one of the Canaanite goddesses, Asherah. So what better way to get rid of the symbols of a goddess you're trying to get rid of than make her snake the bad snake, the woman the bad woman, the tree the bad tree, etc. And so if you study mythology, it's very interesting. And Patrick, as you said earlier, a lot of those stories were borrowed. The Israelites were defeated by the Babylonians in 598 BC, and they took the scholars and the priests, et cetera, to Babylon, because they thought if we did that, then there wouldn't be any leadership for an uprising. That didn't work out. But they got exposed to all those Babylonian myths. And I did a post once about Noah and the flood, and it's almost verbatim what is in Gilgamesh, one of the Babylonian myths.
Right.
So you can see how all those things are influenced. But the biggest detriment, as far as I'm concerned, is the impact on women, because it made women unclean, dirty, subservient, property of man.
Right. Yeah, I was going to ask you what you thought the greatest harm religion has for women. And yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, religion is so ingrained in our culture, and people will blame our culture for holding women back and stuff. And it's like, well, why do you think our culture is the way that it is?
Right. We almost don't recognize it.
Right.
Absolutely. And if you go to Ireland, you will see that, or look online, I guess you don't have to go there, but they have I think they're number one in gender equality in terms of pay between men and women. And they're one of the least religious countries, because they're out in the middle of nowhere, and it took to like 1000 CE for the missionaries to get there. And I visited there a couple of years ago, and their line was, yeah, we kind of had to do trade, but we kept all our own myths. So it's really cool because, you can buy a book of their original myths that were there long before Christianity came. So they got it late. They gave it up early.
Right.
Good for them.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and I wanted to take a quick minute just to give a shout out to Marissa McCool, because it's kind of because of her that we're having you on the podcast, because you saw that she had been a guest on our show and reached out to us. So
thanks, Riss.
Yes, Riss. I was on the Inciting Incident. I was on her podcast, and then we connected. She was going to go to God Awful Movies in Seattle. And I live south of Portland, and she was going to come back and forth. And I go, Riss, you can't do that. It's like a 5-hour drive. So I ended up renting a room, and she and a couple of her friends were there, and we had the best time. It was really fun.
That's great. So I don't know if you know this, but I was actually at the Myth Information Conference.
Oh, you were.
And I saw you there. And you probably didn't hear me scream across the room, Karen!
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, it's all good. It was because you were up there at the microphone, because you were the first person to ask a question.
I was, wasn't I?
Yes, you were. And I was like, oh, yes, because I knew exactly who you were as soon as you got up there. And your question was awesome. You asked them why it was two men up there talking about feminist issues. And that's exactly what I've had a problem with so much lately, is people in this movement keep talking about our issues without involving our voices. And so it's really awesome to see a woman like yourself taking up that charge and talking about feminist issues within the context of faith and faithlessness. And I wanted to thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome. And that's one of the reasons I decided to include only women. I did a survey of the 100 top selling books on atheism. Guess how many of that 100 were written by women?
Probably 10% or under.
6.
Wow.
Oh, man.
6. And you can Google atheist hot new releases or atheist. They do the top 30 and then they do 100. And every time my book appears in there, because I've had a good week, I just get really excited. But, the 4 horsemen, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Daniel Dennett, and Sam Harris kind of started this new atheism movement. Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting because their background was this science and philosophy. And I was just doing a blog post on Jonathan Haidt's book, The Righteous Mind. And he kind of criticizes them for looking at it like it's information. And he said, he has this analogy, I don't know if you've read his book, but it's excellent, about a rider on an elephant. And the rider is our rational self. And that's about, 1%. And then the elephant is emotions and passions, mental processes that come automatically. And so I think you mentioned this earlier, Jenica, that we don't do a real good job of addressing all those other issues. Whether it's community or whether it's music or rituals, we don't have a lot, and religion has done a really, really good job of cementing people into those things where they don't leave, even if they don't believe anymore.
Yeah, right. So, what do you think the main issue is in getting, I guess, more women's voices out? Like, why do you think the men have most of the voices in this area?
Well, if you look at a lot of other leadership issues, whether it's, CEOs in businesses or leading scientists, I think women have made inroads, but it's been in the last 50 years. So I think Richard Dawkins and others did a great job, but we're going to need to shift a little and have a focus on what are the things that women should look at in giving up religion. And I just am putting together a series of memes that I'm going to put on Twitter about all the things in the Bible against women. And it is just, I'm not sure I'll have time to write about them all. But they don't talk about those things. One of my authors, we were having a get together and I was talking to her about Jephthah. And I don't know if you're familiar with that story, but he says to God, hey, if I can beat the Ammonites, I'll give you anything, the first thing out of my house. Well, it turns out to be his daughter. And God doesn't step in like he did with Isaac. She's sacrificed. And the woman who was raised as a Jehovah's Witness was absolutely amazed because they told the story differently. They hadn't been accurate about it. Yeah. Now, when I was growing up, they just didn't tell those stories.
Right, yes.
Exactly. You heard the main ones, and it was cherry picking. Noah and the ark and, Isaac and sacrifice. And it really focused a lot on the New Testament, but there's just as many things in the New Testament, like cover your head, don't say anything, follow your husband. And I think what's really sad about that is if you go back far enough in time, and most people agree that there was a pantheon of god and goddesses, but if you go back further, there was a reverence for females, and it could very well had to do with nature. Because can you imagine what it was like to be Paleolithic man, woman, and see that there's 13 cycles to the moon and the woman bleeds 13 times and she bleeds and doesn't die. And then she gets pregnant and the blood must make the baby, which trust me, they thought for a very long time.
Yeah.
And then she's older and it gets rid of it. So, the woman is the one who has a child, it keeps going, nature, that whole cyclical thing. And that's what was there before. And there are some cultures that still have that, but that's what we've lost. And I think our relationship, even like with climate change, God says you have dominion over the earth, whereas a goddess is we're part of the earth.
Yeah.
Right.
We're part of nature.
Yeah, I remember when I first started reading about the goddesses that came before the big gods that we have now. And I remember thinking, well, gee, it actually makes a little bit of sense to worship goddesses. Like, I still don't believe in goddesses, but if I'm going to worship something, I'm going to worship something that creates life. Like, women actually, make it so we can keep going as a species. So I don't understand why, well, I do understand how and why it happened, but it's kind of ridiculous to think about the fact that, now we worship these like warrior gods when we could be worshiping the bringers of life.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
well, a lot of it has to do with private property.
Yeah.
And if you look at hunter-gatherer groups today, they're much more egalitarian. They have different roles. And they're even, like the Iroquois, the history of the Iroquois have more of a matriarchy or matrilineal society. And as you look at those things, it really makes sense to support a female. But when you have private property, then you want to pass that property on to your son. So your wife has to be a virgin, so the son is yours. She can't commit adultery. Now, you can have as many wives as you want, but you want to pass that on to your son, and that's the only way you're going to know that. So I think it was pretty much all downhill from agriculture. It was really the establishment of the patriarchy. And once you're settled and you're defending that property and you're defending your village, then you need warriors. And yes, there are women who are warriors, but I think that devolved more to men. And so you're the man going out to battle and you say, what am I coming back to worship a woman for? I want to worship a guy.
Yeah.
And there was certainly, one of the things that people think is that the male god came in from kind of the early Indo-Europeans, and they had horses and they were riding horses and they came down from the steppes and they had a male god. So that may have been the first instance of adoption of a male god.
Right. So switching gears a little bit, I know from experience and also from other women online who have spoken up about feminist issues that harassment is a big issue, and just like getting attacked online in all sorts of ways. Have you experienced that yourself? And if so, how have you dealt with it?
I wouldn't call it, I don't think I've been harassed. I used to post to I'd write my post, I'd put it on my website, my blog, and then I would share it with about 50 Facebook pages. And they were the, atheist Facebook pages that I'd compiled and put together. And what I would get, which was really frustrating, was people would make a comment based on the title and they hadn't read the post.
Right.
And that happened to be men a lot. And sometimes they would just, because it was the Faithless Feminist, talk about that and put it down. And for a long time, I would respond and I'd say, what would your mother think of what you just wrote? It's my famous line. And, if you go back and forth a few times and explain what the post was about, they would kind of come over to your side. But it was way too time consuming. So now I only post to women atheists, mostly Facebook pages. It just wasn't worth it. But in terms of, like Twitter or YouTube, I don't get a lot on that.
Well, that's good. I know Twitter is notorious for being just horrible with that. Trolls.
Well, I only follow 200 people, so,
yeah, okay.
I'm not going to necessarily see them, but, and I must say, my participation in the atheist movement, I felt very welcoming. Peter introduced me a lot of people, as I said. I went to the Reason rally, and that's where I met the guys from Mythicist Milwaukee, and I've been on their podcast. I've done a class for them, and I went to Women in Secularism, and there were men and women there. That was really good. So I can't say, I think people have been, by and large, really supportive for the reasons you say, is there aren't a lot of women there. Plus, I'm 67. I'm a dog with a bone. And I just don't take any bullshit. So that could be part of it.
Yeah.
Good for you. That's awesome. I'll take a page out of your book.
Well, my husband was talking about, all the sexual harassment that's occurring. And he said, well, he was in a field that was dominated by men and he was never the boss. So he said, not much happened. And the last 2 jobs I had was the boss. And that's a good way to not make it happen too. But these cases are real. And it's just amazing that, you hear people say, I should have stood up for her. I didn't stand up for her. We've got to get beyond this.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we can get men behind it as well, then, that's really going to help the movement.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the whole raising awareness about the issue in the first place, because a lot of people, like a lot of men especially, are just surprised by how prevalent the issue of harassment and sexual assault and harassment are. Like it's not surprising to me.
Yeah, I'm glad all this stuff is coming out lately. Like all the harassment and sexual abuse accusations, but at the same time, it sucks that we're hearing about how often it happens.
Right. It's like depressing, but at the same time, it's like, well, good. I'm glad we're talking about it now.
Yeah, right.
Well, and it's really a question of power.
Yeah.
In the early 80s, when I was a union rep, I had a woman come up to me after a workshop I'd done. I think it was on harassment, and said she was being harassed by her boss. And I really encouraged her to file a grievance. I would represent her, et cetera, during the process. And she said, I can't afford to. I'm a single mom. Mm-hmm. I can't afford to lose my job. So you've got somebody in power harassing somebody who doesn't have any power. And it's really difficult for that person to stand up for themselves, because they got too much at stake. And that's why what you see is men with power are doing this, because they can get away with it.
Right. Exactly. Right. Yep. And that's why the change needs to start with men, because, it's not on us. It's not our responsibility as women to make something happen or to change what's happening. It's on men to make the change in themselves. And that's why I think this whole awareness thing is great, because then it gets men talking about it and acknowledging it, or at least the men who are worth a damn.
Well, and I think women can play a role too. When I was director of the state bar, somebody was printing pornography. I fired him. And that showed to the other people, that's not acceptable here. You're not going to get away with that here.
Yeah, right.
So if women are in positions of power, or even if you get a group of women to go together, you're stronger with numbers. Get 4 or 5 people to go confront the person or go to HR. And sometimes you have to push, but we never got the right to vote or the equal rights, civil rights amendment without fighting.
That's true.
So it looks like we're just going to have to keep on fighting.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we have to come together and fight these battles together, I think. Oh, so I don't know if you know about this or not. You might. I didn't, but someone that I know well now, I don't think she's out as an atheist, so I'm not going to use her name, but she started a Women Beyond Belief support group in Cincinnati, and I believe it's the first one. I'm not sure, but we just had our first meeting, and I attended, and it was really awesome. And I was wondering if you knew about that, and if you know any other ones starting.
Of course. And Wendy Marsman puts her name out there, so I don't think that's a problem. But she, and you may have somebody locally, but it started out with Wendy, who had spent 30 years as a missionary in Brazil or something. And she emailed me. She said she wanted to start this podcast about women, and somebody suggested Women Beyond Belief, but she wouldn't use the name if it wasn't okay, because she found out it was my book. And I said, oh, are you kidding? We'll work together. So I've recorded some of my blog posts for her. She sent me people who write. And then she did tell me lately that she's encouraging people to do these support groups, which I think is great. And I just love the fact that it's Women Beyond Belief.
Yeah.
So you put in Women Beyond Belief, and you're going to get support groups, podcasts, right. YouTube, books, etc. So I was really pleased to work with her. And I think we have to be, and I think women are pretty good about sharing. You do encounter some people who will say, no, I'm going to do my own thing, and I don't want to help you. I don't want to advertise your book. I don't want to do anything. But it's really few and far between. I think what's happening between Wendy and me is more typical. And hopefully she will bring more people on and get involved, and this will grow.
Yeah, I think that is typical as well. And I can definitely see this growing, because it's a whole different feeling for women being in religion in the first place, but also coming out of it. It's a unique experience for women. And so I think that it's going to be really helpful to a lot of people. And I'm pretty excited about it. And yes, I have spoken with Wendy. I actually plan on having her on the podcast as well. There's a local woman who started it, and I don't think she's out. So that's why I didn't want to mention her name. But she's doing a great job. She actually brought your book to the meeting and was showing everybody.
Oh, that's so sweet. You just made my day.
We should get them in touch.
Right, yeah. Well, did you have another question?
Yeah. So what would you say is your main goal throughout writing books, the blog, podcasts, stuff like that?
I think it's to teach women that this is a fable. It's a myth. It was created by men. It did bring us together as a social group. Understand that. But if you look at the history of religion, it has done a lot more harm than good. And it's time to leave. It's time to speak up. It's time to rely on science, reason, all of those other things. And we can make the world a better place. Now, we have it pretty good in the United States, but we have a long way to go in a lot of other countries. And it is time for women to be equal to men.
Exactly.
You couldn't see me, but I was pumping my fist in the air.
Little Rosie the Riveter simp. Yeah.
Yes. Well, Karen, you are awesome, and I appreciate the work you're doing. And I would encourage all of our listeners to go check out her book, Women Beyond Belief, her blog, Faithless Feminist, YouTube channel, Facebook page. She's all over the place.
And you said your next book, Women versus Religion, is coming out next June, right?
That's correct.
Awesome.
Yep. So we look forward to that, and we appreciate you coming on the episode tonight.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
Well, you're entirely welcome, and I'll get back with you when the book's out, the second one.
Sounds
and then
great.
I've got to say I'm moving on to novels.
Ooh.
I'm going to write. Yeah, I'm thinking of writing. Now, I don't know if I'll accomplish this, but I'm starting to study the Paleolithic and write a story about what it was like, and then do the Neolithic, et cetera. So you can see the progression over time, but do as it a novel so people are a little more open to it. So it would be
really
based on research, but show how women's roles changed over time.
That
sounds very interesting.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
I'm looking forward to that.
Well, thanks again, Karen, and you take care.
Well,
We'll put all of the links to all of your stuff in our show notes as well.
Great. And send me the link so that I can put it on my social media too. And thank you very much for taking the time to interview me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
So that was our interview with Karen Garst. She's awesome. Seriously, check out her stuff. We really enjoyed talking to her tonight.
And like we said, we will put all of her links in the show notes. She's got a blog. She's got some books. She's got a YouTube.
A book. And she's got another one coming out.
Right. She's working on the second one.
Yeah. But now it's time to thank our patrons. And we have a couple new ones this week.
Oh, yeah. First, we would like to thank Rich. He wants us to plug Recovering from Religion. You can go to the website recoveringfromreligion.org, and they also have the Helpline Project. You can talk to agents either on the phone or on chat if you have any questions, if you're struggling with losing your religion. Go check them out. The good organization.
For sure. And just a heads up, we're going to talk about the new patrons at the end of our plugs, in case you got confused.
Yes, I got confused.
I think I'm confused.
We're all confused here.
We're tired. It's been a long week. So, the next person that we would like to plug, who's a patron of ours, is Thomas Smith, who is the host of Serious Inquiries Only. Awesome podcast where he takes a critical thinking look at topics such as science, religion, politics, and interviews some fantastic people. And
we'd also like to thank Christopher, who is one of our top patrons, and he would like to plug the Tri-State Freethinkers, which We are actually part of that group. They cover Kentucky, Ohio, and Indiana. And they do all kinds of different projects and community service events. You check out their calendar, and there's events almost every night of the week. They do activism, community service, education, and
social events.
And social events. So if you're in the Cincinnati, Kentucky, Indiana area, if you want to join this group, they are pretty awesome.
That reminds me, I need to do my resume for the board position. I keep forgetting.
Better get on that. It's coming up.
God, there's so much going on. All right, so that brings us to our new patrons, right?
That brings us to them.
Yay.
Woohoo.
So we have a new patron, Rex. Thank you, Rex, for being a new patron of ours.
Thank you, Rex.
And we have a new top patron, Miss Marissa Alexa McCool. And Bethany Futrell? Anyway, Marissa and Bethany from the Inciting Incident podcast, which we were recently guests on.
And they were guests on ours. Well,
Riss was. Yeah.
Bethany was MIA.
Yeah, Bethany, what the heck, man?
She was too busy eating her avocado toast.
I guess so. Maybe it's because we didn't invite her because we didn't know we were interviewing.
Yeah, right. But seriously, thank you guys.
It all worked out.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for supporting our show. You guys are awesome.
Yep, pretty much the best. And Riss, damn it, stop making me cry. I was literally like ugly crying today. She was saying such sweet stuff about me.
Yeah, she
and
was.
About how we're helping people with the podcast and stuff. And I'm just like sitting there like ugly crying.
I walk in from work and see her crying at the computer.
And you're probably like, oh no, what happened? Nope, just Riss saying really nice stuff about me and about us. Making me all sappy. Anywho, we love you guys. Thank you so much for becoming our top patrons. And I was going to do a plug for Inciting Incident, but we kind of already covered that by blabbing on. So yeah, we'll put them, we'll put Inciting Incidents links also in the show notes. Man, we got to remember a lot of links for this week.
Yeah, we do.
Phew. So yeah, definitely check out this week's show notes. You'll get all kinds of juicy stuff. And I think that'll wrap it up for this episode.
I think so.
Bada bing, bada bang. I think we
bada boom.
Did all right. Hopefully the audio turned out okay.
Yeah. The magic of editing.
Yeah, we'll see if it's magical this time.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. We haven't listened back. We like literally just finished recording with Karen. So, all right, everyone. Thank you for listening again this week, and we will catch you next time. But in the meantime,
keep it real.